back, because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year.
He's going back.
We have 5 companies in
it's not
phase
good
3
for him.
clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year,
This dude,
when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States,
holy shit.
not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives.
Where do we even
His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think the American people, I'm going to say again, can be proud of what we have done. And Senator, please stop undermining confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now.
Will you answer the question, please?
Would make her proud. She must be looking
Like,
down.
looking at your face is irritating me.
Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about
And locking up black
the
people,
value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance
Respecting
of
the
fighting for
police,
the dignity of all people. I
and
think
locking
Joe
up
asked me to
Negroes.
serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I
Ew.
created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected
More clap,
the
female
first,
clap, prison guards
woman of
clap.
color and black woman to be elected
Here we
to
go.
the Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice.
God.
And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners.
To locking up homeless
politicians that
women.
were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our
Oh my
soldiers
God, this is
in war
like-
zones. And I think Joe has
So
asked
for
me to serve
someone
with
like
him
me, this is
because he
even
knows
more
that we
painful than the
share-
presidential debates,
share a
because
purpose,
at
which
least
is about
I can be
lifting up
like,
the
oh, they're
American
stupid.
people.
That's why
And
they're
after
avoiding the
4
questions.
years
But
that we
this
have
is
seen
just
Donald
like
Trump
brutal.
unifying our
Like
country around
this
our
level
common
of
values.
intellectual dishonesty is like
Thank you,
physically
Senator
painful to
Harris.
me.
Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know?
Absolutely.
Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of
Make myself comfortable
prayers
here.
and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely
Do not trust anything from the White House
more
about
than-
the president's
more than a
health.
little moved.
Just saying.
By the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But
Why would you admit that?
the reality is, we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same
These are the
question I
such-
asked,
these
which
are
is,
the
do voters
Goku level
have a right
dodges.
to know more detailed health
Insane
information
dodges.
about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes.
Oh,
We now know because of
All right, let's
great
go, let's go.
investigative journalism that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000?" And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody.
yikes.
And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American
Yikes.
people have a right to know what is
Yikes.
influencing the President's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright, but Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to
Yikes.
give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
The American people have a president who's a businessman, who's a job creator, who's paid tens
Oh, my
of
God.
millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American
Oh,
people can
God.
review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you,
And
Vice President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation,
Thank you,
unleashing
Vice
American
President
energy,
Pence.
fighting for free and fair trade, and all of that's
Thank you,
on the
Vice
line
President
if
Pence.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a
the
good
White
segue into our third
great
topic,
segue.
which is about the economy.
They
this
are
has been another
clapping
aspect
them.
of life for Americans. It's been so
God, I didn't realize
by
Mike
this
Pence was this low
coronavirus. We have
energy.
a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9%
Right, Kuma
in
Bear?
September.
That's
but
facts.
the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the
They're
year
actually bringing
haven't
this
been
up.
replaced.
Holy
Those
shit.
hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations.
Okay.
Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and
They're
create
wrong.
jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk, and you have 2 minutes. to answer
Absolutely not.
Uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America,
Yikes.
leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for.
Yikes.
On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that.
Hit 'em
He'll
where it
invest in
hurts.
infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also
There we go.
investing in clean energy and renewable energy.
There we go.
Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family
Yes,
that
please.
makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy, which is it's about
Wow.
investing in the people of our country as opposed to passing a tax bill, which had the benefit of letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been
Damn, she's
predicting
clapping
rapid
his
and robust
cheeks.
recovery.
This is
But
brutal.
the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months,
Right.
but a year?
She knocked
or
that
more?
softball
You have
pitch
2
out of the
minutes to
park.
answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression.
That is false.
It's when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy.
That's
President
true.
Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes.
That is false.
And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of 4 increased by $4,000.
Wrong.
President
Wrong.
tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs.
That's the
because
cool
we
thing
had a
about
president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed
Republicans is that
American
they can just
energy, fought for free
lie,
and fair trade,
and no one will
secured
ever question them.
$4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared no expense.
That is
to help
false. The
American
Paycheck
people and
Protection
American
Program
workers
went to
through this.
giant
Joe Biden
corporations.
and
The
Kamala
corporation
Harris
I quit was
want
one
to
of them.
raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of
It would
American
also
jobs
not
all
fucking
across the
destroy the planet,
and Joe
dude.
Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China that when we took
I
office,
really don't
half
understand
of our
Republicans who
international
want to
trade
like go
deficit
back
with
to
China
fucking like
alone.
strip mining
Joe
coal
Biden wants
seams
to
and
repeal all of the
fucking
tariffs
like what
that
the
President
fuck, man?
Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth
Thank you,
and
sir.
opportunity,
Thank you,
4
Vice
more years of President Donald Trump. 2021
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
be the
President
biggest
Pence.
economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator
False.
Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the
Oof.
truth and the fact
Please,
is, Joe
please come
Biden has
through.
been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
He said
a
he's going to
year.
repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Ooh,
It'd
I'm speaking.
be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break.
That is wrong. Please.
Senator,
That is
that's the math.
absolutely not true.
Yes!
The tax
Only
bill-
cutting, is he only to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about
Oh
that.
God. Oh no.
Joe Biden is
Please.
the one who,
Why would you
during
admit
the,
that?
the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they ran. When
It's
they
Fox
rode the
News, though,
coattails
Kuma Bear, so
of Joe Biden's success.
they get rich
for the
off his
economy
lies
that they had at the beginning
in
of
the-
their
in the
term.
long
Of
run.
course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of,
Thank you, Senator
trying to
Harris.
get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but we
important.
need to give Vice President.
I'd
Pence a
just like
chance
to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing
Thank you.
condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing
nonsense.
condition,
Thank you. Thank
they're
you, Senator
coming for
Harris.
you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're
Let me
welcome.
give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The
Okay.
American people remember
Okay.
it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and
You've had a plan for 4 years. Like, when is the plan
American.
coming? Like,
But
what
look,
is it? When do we get to see
Senator Harris,
this?
You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Oh,
You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for
That's a
president
good line.
that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye,
Please ban fracking.
pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a
Please.
$2 trillion
Please
version
do
of the
that.
Green New Deal, Susan, that your
They
newspaper,
won't,
USA
but I wish
Today,
they
said
would.
really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep
It's crazy
America
how
growing. The
right-wingers
V-shaped
are
recovery that's
motivated by
underway
their
right
fear
now
of
will
non-white
continue with
people.
4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the
Don't
West.
even name them anymore. That's how
Do you
common they are.
believe,
Wow.
as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest.
Source?
And just a little while ago, the president signed.
They
the
still
Outdoors
don't
Act,
have
the
clean
largest
water in
investment
Flint.
our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it?
We know what the
President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would
physically
crush
painful.
American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord. But
I
we've done
want
it
a source
through
for that.
innovation
I
and we've
very,
done it through
very
natural
much
gas
doubt that.
and fracking, which, Senator, the
I am
American people
dying
can
for a source
go
on
look
that.
at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating
that's
the kind
exactly
of
right,
American
Kuma Bear.
innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult
you.
as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than
Thank
there
you.
were 100 years ago.
Thank
He's
you.
stupid.
But many of the climate alarmists
President Pence,
use
I'm sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires to try and
Thank
sell
you,
their
Vice
bill of
President
goods of a
Pence.
Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs and
President
American
Pence.
workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very
Fracking
clear
destroys
that
the
he
environment.
thinks
It
about
destroys the water
growing
table.
jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website? And then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration.
Wow,
They don't
coming
believe
for
in
that neck.
science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know.
Wow.
Let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe
he
is
kept
about
his fucking mouth
saying
shut
we're
on
gonna
that
invest
one.
that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We
He
will
grabbed a bottle of
achieve
water. I'm thirsty.
net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord. Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking.
Yo, what's up, Megan Zoe?
We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
put
President.
America
Wow.
first. He's going to put
I just
jobs
heard him use
first.
the word
We're gonna take
retrofit. I don't know what he was
care of our
talking about, but he already
environment and
sounds
follow the
fucking
science.
stupid.
But
I won't
yeah,
even
you know,
listen
on
to
the
him
issue
for like
of
5
jobs,
seconds.
Senator,
Jesus
Let's
Christ.
talk about that. The
That's
Vice
insane.
President earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China.
That's what sucks is they both
That's right.
fuck with fracking,
You
and
lost
fracking destroys the planet.
What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs.
Wrecked.
Farmers have experienced bankruptcy
Wrecked.
because of it.
Wrecked.
We are in a manufacturing recession because of it.
All facts.
And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration,
Dragon fruit.
they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people
This
know
is
what I'm
facts.
talking
This is
about.
very
You
unfortunate, and the
know.
Republicans
I
are
think
like,
about 20-year-olds.
they don't even
You know,
understand
we have
it.
a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me?
fuck
We're
no.
looking at
Welcome to
people
my
who are
world.
trying to figure out how they're going to pay
I
rent
graduated
by the
high
end
school
of
in
the month. Almost
2007.
half of
Imagine
American
my fucking
renters
surprise.
Are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month.
Hell
This
no.
is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership.
I was kind of
of
worried
this
about Kamala
administration.
because she
Thank you,
definitely
Senator
Goku
Harris.
dodged the first
Vice
question I
President,
watched her
let me give just
answer,
15
but
seconds
now
to
she's
respond, because then I
definitely
want-
giving him the
Well,
two-piece.
I'd
Bang, bang.
love to
Give him the
respond.
two-piece and the biscuit.
Lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades. And
Oh,
again,
Jesus Christ,
Senator Harris,
dude.
you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
I am
Joe
old.
Biden's vice
I'm
president
very
lost
old. Much older than I look.
200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes,
you, Vice
rolled back
President.
regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000
Thank you, Vice
manufacturing
President
jobs
Pence.
created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through
Thank you, Vice
this
President
pandemic.
Pence.
But a
Mr.
Green New
Thank you,
Deal, your
Vice President
massive new
Pence.
mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I'd like
Susan,
to-
I just need to respond very briefly,
15
please.
seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So
Oh.
let's set the record straight.
Oh. Bang.
to talk about
Douche.
China.
Gave him that fucking
We have
duff.
as our next topic. We have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner.
Look at her writing shit. Look at her writing shit.
Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan.
I said China will pay.
Well, before I leave that, let me speak to
Oh,
voting
God.
records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your
Which is
your
true.
radical environmental agenda
Oh, my
ahead
God.
of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. I think the American people deserve to know that. Is probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. More liberal
Wow.
than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now, with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus.
No.
And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World
That's
Health
what Republicans
Organization
do, though.
play
He
straight
fucking
to the
he
American
quoted Newsweek.
They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it was
Thank you, Vice
xenophobic.
President Pence.
But President Trump has
Right,
said
exactly,
to
Rexy.
China, we're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and
True.
Vice President.
Facts.
For example,
True.
they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got away, they got rid of it.
Not true.
There
That
was
is actually
a
not
team
true.
of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out.
That is true.
We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States.
why wouldn't they?
This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this
Yikes.
administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know
Facts.
this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020.
Yikes.
Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI said the same. But Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community.
Yikes.
You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up
Facts.
what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal.
I support
we were
that,
in
but
that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Yikes.
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel.
who gives a
When
shit?
Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We stood strong
When?
with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military.
Pennsylvania's a big fucking
And our
state.
armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, two of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other Beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they
Yeah, why would you talk about this?
But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look, we
President.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you
My
talk
eyes are
about
gonna roll
reentering
out of my
the
fucking
Iran
head.
nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President
terrorism.
Pence.
President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad,
The leading
you,
state
Vice
sponsor of
to
terrorism
Americans,
is Saudi Arabia.
President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are
After the
safer.
United
American
States, of
people know
course.
President Donald Trump will never
Thank you,
hesitate
Vice President
to take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length because, of course, there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank
He
you.
has to do that, though. He has to swing at Biden
First of all,
because
to
he
the
and Trump have
Mueller family,
accomplished
I
nothing.
know
Big
about your
fat
daughter's
nothing
case,
sandwich.
And I'm so sorry.
The only thing they have accomplished
I'm
is
so
making the
sorry.
libs cry, owning the libs, because that's
What
the
happened to
only
her
thing the
is
Republicans care about.
awful. And it should have never happened.
Reversing all of
And I know Joe
Obama
feels the same
stuff and just
And
being
I know
terrible.
that President
basically.
Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there.
Okay.
So
Where you taking me?
after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do
Is
you
she
know what
about to talk
Donald
about-
Trump dismissed them as? Headaches.
Oh.
And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men
They're
who are serving
gonna
in
mute
our
Trump, I would
military as
imagine. They
suckers
kinda
and
have to.
losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, "What's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what
He's
he
right,
said
though.
about John McCain, a
Damn.
great American hero.
Fuck John McCain.
And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads
Oh, talk that talk.
of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank you.
Joe Biden
Ooh.
but Joe Biden would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well.
Yikes.
And
Susan,
I want to make
respond
sure
to
we
that.
have a chance
I really have to
talk about.
respond to that.
I'm-
Look, she has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look,
well,
She did
I'm
go
sorry,
there.
but
I'm
Vice
trying to have
President,
more
you
than
had
that.
more time than she's had
the
so far.
slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces.
I'm ripping
are
rippers. I don't
absurd.
feel like listening to this.
I'm-
Tell
I'm
me if
sorry,
he
Vice
says
My
something
son
fucking
is a
stupid.
captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
But
Let
Thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
the
Vice
The
President
American
Pence,
people
you know,
deserve, Susan,
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people
I
deserve to
didn't,
know.
Vice President
that-
Pence, I did not,
that-
excuse
The
me,
Amer- Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden
Your
and Kam-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's
I-
debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right
which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling.
They're not going to overturn
Access
Roe v.
to
Wade. They're
abortion
going to talk
would
about it,
be
but they're not
to
going to
the
do it.
states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban
Indiana.
all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question.
They
but
can't.
I'll use a little bit
They're
of my time
base.
to respond to that very important.
There's a lot of white women in their base. They're not going
American
to let
people
them
deserve to
overturn Roe v.
know
Wade.
Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the
White
death
women aren't
of
that
hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden,
I mean, it was a
explainable.
fucked up move. It
Because
put a
history
lot of
records
people in a
that
lot
Joe
of
Biden
danger.
actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members. And that's
Taking out Soleimani put American lives in
now,
direct
with regard
danger,
to the
I would
Supreme
say.
Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
He had to go back to the
become
last
Justice
question.
Amy Coney Barrett. She's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience. and
She's
a
had him on the
sizable
back
family
foot this whole debate. I
of the
will say
Supreme
that
Court of the
much.
United States.
Like that kind of
Our
stuff
hope
doesn't
is,
fucking
and
matter
here
for
next week,
Republicans
unlike
because
Justice
Republicans are
Kavanaugh
fucking
received
brain
this
dead
treatment
and
from you
they
and
don't pay
others,
attention to like
and we
facts
hope
or
she gets a
reality.
fair hearing.
But she has definitely had him on the back
Particularly
foot
hope
this
that
whole
we don't
debate.
see the kind of
Like
attacks
he's
on her Christian
Yeah.
faith that we saw before.
oh now we got to go to the
The
Christian faith.
Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus hold
Fuck the
pro-life
Knights of
views
Columbus.
and
Thank you,
current views.
thank you, Vice President.
Fuck
Your
the Knights of
time is up.
Columbus.
When
They
the hearing
fuck
takes
kids.
place, that
Thank you, Vice President.
The Knights of
Judge
Columbus
Amy Coney
fuck
Barrett
kids,
will be respected,
allegedly.
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
Voted and confirmed
Knights
by
of
the
Columbus
Supreme Court
fuck
of the
children.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you.
Even if we didn't have separation of
to
church and state, I would not be comfortable
If Roe v.
having
Wade
any
is
fucking
overturned,
pedophile supporters
what would you
anywhere
want
in my fucking
California
government.
to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access? to
Absolutely
abortion?
not.
And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as President of the United States.
That
On the issue
is not
of
good.
of this nomination,
I do not like Catholics.
Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27
That's a personal
days
thing.
before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so
This is
Joe has
facts.
been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. It's the Affordable Care Act. Like, literally in the
Picking a
midst
scab.
of a
It's gross.
public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public
Thank you,
option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
You know, you mentioned
Damn.
earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed.
She's fucking him up, this debate. I
maintain
can't front.
protection
Like, she's
for people with
really just,
pre-existing
like,
conditions.
seriously fucking him up.
But you do have this court
She's
case that you
busting
are
his
supporting,
cheeks,
your
this debate.
administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that.
'Cause
And
he
that was one
doesn't
of the toughest nuts
plan
crack
to.
when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable
Fuck
Care
'em.
Act is
That's his answer.
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term
That is
abortion.
false.
They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our
Abortion
part,
is not the
I would
only
never
thing
presume
that
on Judge
Planned
Amy
Parenthood
Coney Barrett
does. I really
rule
hope
on the
everyone knows
Supreme
that.
Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think
Right
the American people
to
really
life.
deserve an answer, Senator Harris.
Wow.
Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, You're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused
Republicans
to answer the
change the
question.
rules all
Joe
the fucking
Biden has
time.
refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a
Supreme
little
Court
history
judges
lesson.
should have
Let's do that a
terms
little
if
more.
we're
In
advocating
1861
for
I'd like you to answer
the
the question.
legitimacy
Yes,
of the
Vice
United States
President, I'm
government.
speaking. I'm speaking.
Oh, he thinks he's got a gotcha. He thinks he
In
found the win button.
1864.
Ladies and gentlemen,
One of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume if you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you,
And the
Senator
American
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about
You
packing.
once
Come
again
on,
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
trying to answer you
The American
now.
people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to
I
tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to.
uh-oh.
So
Bring this
the
heat.
Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk
Oh
about
my
the issue
God!
of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So I think the American people,
Thank
maybe
you.
the next debate.
Oh
Joe Biden
my
will answer.
God!
I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers
And he
executing a
didn't-
search
oh my
warrant in a
God,
narcotics
she duffed him.
investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend
I
said
hate that
he
I'm
didn't
enjoying
hear them
this.
do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting
Oh, is this
in
Breonna Taylor?
self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was
we go.
justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently.
Yeah, she was an emergency room
And
technician, I believe.
It brings me
she was
to
a healthcare worker. She was an
the
essential
8 minutes
worker.
and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which
George Floyd.
an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country,
What's up, Human Roku?
of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We
No,
will
he wouldn't.
require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform,
Okay.
get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and
Thank
we
you.
will decriminalize
That's
marijuana.
necessary.
And
Thank you,
we will
Senator Harris.
we will expunge the records of those who have
Thank you,
been
Senator
convicted
Harris.
of marijuana. This is
Thank
a
you,
time
Senator
for
Harris.
leadership
Whoa.
on a tragic issue.
Senator
That's
Harris,
large.
your time
Unarmed
is up.
black people in America who
Thank
have
you,
been
Senator
killed.
Harris.
That's large.
Vice
though.
President Pence, let me pose the same
Black
question
vote
to you.
secured.
In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart
Those are
breaks
some large
for
claims.
any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathy.
Ending private prisons and getting rid of cash
But
bail. Those
I
are
trust our
cornerstones
justice
of
system.
the
A
American
grand jury
economy.
refused the evidence.
It's gonna be
And
different.
it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting
Oh my
that
God.
followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake
If you
City.
watched my stream, you know that there
Just a few
was, at
weeks
least in
ago, I
Baltimore
stood at
City,
what
there was
used
no
to be-
rioting, there was no looting.
Her salon was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together.
Oh God.
And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist.
Oh
That, as
God.
Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities
That's facts. This is true.
is a great insult to the men.
Did a
and
fly
women
just
who
land in
serve
his
law
hair?
enforcement
A fly
every
just
day,
landed in his
puts
hair.
on the uniform of law enforcement
A
every day.
fly just
President
landed
Trump
in
and
his
I
motherfucking
stand
hair.
with you.
Look at his hair.
It's remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a
Does he
group of
not feel
Republicans and
that?
Democrats, Senator Harris
He has to
walked
feel
out of
that.
the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided.
He has a
millions of
fly
resources.
in his
We
hair.
have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American
Thank you,
neighbors
Vice
and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's
It was looking
leadership,
for a
Thank
piece of
always
shit
stand
and
with
found
law
the nastiest
enforcement
place.
and to
Yes,
do
facts.
what we've done
Vice
since
President
day
Pence,
one, and
thank
that is
you.
in
Your
He is
time is up.
literal.
lives of
He is possessed by
African
Satan
Americans,
right now.
Thank you, Vice
record
President
unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and will
up.
fight for school choice for all of our minorities.
Thank you, Vice
I'd
President.
like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the
Hell
only
yeah,
one on
Bug
this
Pals.
stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Oh, went there. Does he still have the fly in his
And-
hair?
Not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He
She
he
keeps
called
hitting him with that.
Mexicans rapists and criminals.
Oh, the fly flew away. He must have swatted it or
instituted as his
something.
first act a Muslim
They went to
ban,
they went to camera
unleashed
B
of
so he could fucking get that
Charlottesville,
fly out of his hair.
where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs.
Yikes.
And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. And America, you deserve better.
David
Joe
Duke
Biden will be a
endorses Donald
president
Trump for
who
president.
brings our country together
Senator Harris?
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the
Oh,
fact
no.
that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have
thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan.
Oh God, here we
Is that
go.
you
The fake
selectively
news.
edit, just like Senator Harris did.
I heard somebody
Comments
laugh
that
out
President
loud.
Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments. He condemned
No.
the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists.
Debate
And
over
so
monuments? Someone
repeatedly,
died.
You're concerned that he
Someone
doesn't
was
condemn
killed.
Neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish.
Thomas Jefferson
This
had
is a
black
president
children.
who respects and cherishes all of the American people. But you talk about having personally prosecuted.
Thomas
and you brought up
Jefferson
your records.
literally owned people as
I really
property
need to make this
that he
point.
also had
When you
children
were-
with,
When you were DA
and considered those
in
children
San
property.
Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times
I don't get
more
why
likely to
right-wingers
be
always do
prosecuted
that.
for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney
Thank you.
General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank you.
blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to
you.
pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality
can't
is
even look her
your
in the
record
eye.
speaks
Thank you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President
Pence.
Trump and I have fought for criminal justice.
can't even
reform.
look her in
Thank
the
you,
eye.
Vice
We've
President
fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you,
minorities.
sir.
And we'll do it for 4 more
Thank you.
years.
You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you,
Meaningless.
Senator
I
Harris.
would like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work
Damn.
of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This
Damn.
is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose the first.
She's leaning really hard into
On
that.
our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept
Why
a
does this
peaceful
question
transfer
keep
of
coming
power,
up?
what
I want to see what
steps would you and
Pence's
Vice
answer to this is,
President
though.
Biden
I am
take?
curious.
What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have
I
support
mean,
of
in a
Democrats,
war of
but also
attrition,
independents and Republicans. In fact,
rats sink to a
7
dying
members
ship,
of,
or rats stick
President
to a
George W.
sinking
Bush's
ship,
cabinet
whatever. I don't know.
are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign.
Literal
And
spooks.
I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election.
Oh, let's get it.
If
Let's
Vice
get it.
President Biden
Where's that
is declared
fly?
the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life.
You literally are the
I have every
establishment.
confidence
You've been
the same Americans
president
that
and
delivered
vice
that
president
historic
for
victory in
4
2016.
years.
They see this president's
Oh, my
record
God.
where we rebuild our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement.
He
in
literally
DC.
just admitted to
And I
packing the
think-
courts.
I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the
God.
last 4 years. When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election.
What?
It's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years.
Wow.
Until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed.
Nope, not going to address
And
the
then,
question at all.
Senator Harris, you and
I
your
should have known
colleagues
there'd
in
be a
the-
Goku
in the
dodge. He's
Congress
not as stupid as
tried
Trump.
to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to be.
Is he blaming them specifically for voter
I believe in all my
fraud?
heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders
Who
can't get
gives a
along,
shit what some
how are the
dumbass
citizens
8th
supposed
grader
to get along?
thinks?
And then she added, your examples could make all the difference to bring us together, end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question.
Brecklin.
And,
I wonder where
Let me just
I'm
commend you
going to
for
keep
taking
my
an
mouth
interest
shut.
in public life.
Brecklin.
I started
Brecklin
following
Brown.
the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange. of
Brecklin
debate.
Brown in 8th grade who doesn't
celebrate
understand why people
It's
argue.
how we've created literally
on the debate
freest
stage.
and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously,
That's
as Senator
gross.
Harris and I have on this stage tonight.
I don't know.
But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another
This
in times of
is
need. And
false.
We've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually
Facts,
your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so
But
much
it's
for
more
being with
like,
us tonight. We want to
who
thank
gets treated as
also
people
the
and who
University of
gets
Utah
treated
for
as
its
commodities.
hospitality. And most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
Damn. She clapped his fucking cheeks. They're gonna hug. No. I'm cringing so hard. Why is everybody touching each other? Look at his ears. Why? What is wrong with his ears? Why are his ears that... Yeah, Kuma. Yeah, that's why I was saying the whole stream. Like, I really wish shit like this mattered for right-wingers. Like, I wish they weren't fucking brain dead and actually had the capacity to, like, understand reality. Yeah, I feel like there's probably supposed to be, like, Muzak or something over all this B-roll, but they forgot. It's a big fucking camera. It's a giant ass lens. The Commission on Presidential Debates. I want to know why Kamala Harris's husband's ears were all fucked up like that. Are his ears, like, for real, like, that much larger than the average? Oh, man. All right. Well, what do you guys want? What should I do? What, should we play something? I want to hop back into Discord and see what Steven's doing. Oh, they're playing Among Us. Let me message Steven. Sock. I don't know. Well, I don't know. What would be interesting to look at while we figure out what we're going to play? Aluminum hand. Whatever. What's up, y'all? How you doing? I was just about to say, I might do that. Hold up. Yo. Y'all ready for this? Hold up. Peep this. This is the homie. Keep this shit. Hell yeah, I fuck with the ones that go like, ooh, nah. Yeah, this shit's tough, bro. Yo, we'll listen to the rest another time. I'm trying to fucking play some Road Company real quick. I'm gonna end the stream and restart it so that it's different, because Facebook is stupid like that. Oh yeah. I would have played the rest of it, but my homie is like sitting here waiting for me to play this game, so I didn't want him to start without me. But it's cool that my chat, everyone didn't immediately leave, so I'm definitely gonna do more like playing of music. But on that note, I'm gonna play some Road Company with my friend Fade Runner. You might know him. He wields the band hammer in this chat. But I'm gonna briefly end the stream. Just refresh the stream if you would like to continue watching wherever you are. And